Internet, we finally arrived. After 7 twists and turns on this winding road, we have nearly reached our destination, part 8 of the road to victory for every winner of Big Brother. From season 2 to season 25, a lot of time has been invested to get to this point, and we're nearly there, but we're not done just yet. 3 more winners are on the docket, the 3 latest winners as of this video, although we're about to change that. And we've got a lot to talk about. And I mean it. As far as word count goes, this is going to be the longest video in the history of my channel. Now, if you haven't seen the previous 7 parts of this series, well, you showed up at the right time for a binge because welcome to the beginning of the end. For now, let's talk about Big Brother 23. Xavier Prather, also known as X, walked into the Big Brother 23 house, ready to lay low and chill. He was a 27-year-old lawyer who decided to hide his profession from the cast, telling them that he was instead a bartender. He was fit, attractive, had a deep voice and a calm demeanor, and he was overall going to get along with everyone and do his best to be as diplomatic as possible. Right away, the cast was split into 4 teams of 4, with Xavier placed on the Kings team alongside Christian, Alyssa, and Sarah Beth. Frenchie won the HOH for the Joker's team in the first week, rendering them all safe, and in turn, with Frenchie helming the season as its first head of household, it was about to be one of the wildest week 1s in BB history. Frenchie was all over the place, left, right, and center. He initially said that he didn't want to target any women or people of color, and instead wanted to go after the meatheads. He created a big alliance called the Slaughterhouse that did include X, and within the Slaughterhouse there was a sub-alliance called the Butchers, also including X. X was in a pretty okay spot, an inner layer of a majority with the Kings team on the side. However, Frenchie wanted to take a shot at Christian, one of X's teammates, and then Christian won a new twist called the wildcard comp, giving him safety. Christian also gave X safety for the week, as he earned that power, I guess, through winning this comp, meaning X was now on to week 2. Except Frenchie began to bend over backwards to make sense of his targets. He also targeted Brent, but then spoke to Brent and decided not to target Brent. So he landed on Alyssa being a nom because she was flirting with Christian, and then also Kyland because of paranoia and drama, and yeah. X was there through all of this. He was not really a fan of the Kyland nomination. Frenchie kind of got annoyed at X when he found this out, but Frenchie was a hot mess, and none of this would ultimately matter beyond week 2. Derek X won the veto, even though he was also now a target, used it on Kyland as part of a deal, and Travis was put up as a sacrifice for Derek X to gain back some of his reputation in the house that Frenchie had sullied. There is so much that goes on in this first week. It's a lot to talk about, but not much of it has to do with X's road to victory. It's ultimately just how the week progressed. That being said, if I could pinpoint 3 major events that happened to chart X's journey to the win, regardless of Frenchie, the first point happened here in week 1, where he made a pact with Derek F, Tiffany, Azah, and Kyland to look out for each other. This was the first year the BB producers included the diversity initiative to ensure half the cast would be POC, and as such, given the history of the show having never had a black winner, or statistically black players do well at all, especially in the past 10 years, and coupled with the cultural shift in the country the previous year before the season, these 5 players chose to look out for one another. It was a loose alliance called the Cookout, and it didn't have much of a structure or a plan, just a common bond and a desire to look out for one another if they could. Kyland won the week 2 HOH, and with Frenchie losing his mind given Kyland was just nominated by Frenchie, the Slaughterhouse began to explode. Kyland would tell Sarah Beth, a close ally of his, about the alliance, and after Sarah Beth won the wildcard comp to gain safety, she let others know that Frenchie blew it up. Although it was actually Kyland who told her about it. But Frenchie also did get frustrated and yell about the alliance being worthless now publicly, and he was right, as Kyland nominated Frenchie and Brittany, and the target was clear as day. Derek X won the veto again, didn't use it, and Frenchie was a dead man walking out the front door. In light of all that, it's worth noting that Kyland, Derek F., and X formed a final three alliance to go to the end together. They already had the cookout, now they had the men in the cookout bonded too. Problems arose this week for X as Christian and Alyssa weren't too close to him and were instead beginning to get into a showmance. X kind of had a crush on Alyssa and became their third wheel on the Kings team, and Christian kind of noted how X felt a tad bit jealous of their situation. With all of the calamity of Frenchie leaving, Tiffany and Kyland worked together to form a new majority. They pulled together the Queens and the Kings and Derek X and Ace to form a new alliance called the Royal Flush. This alliance worked perfectly for Tiff and Kai as it contained all of their closest allies and would keep bigger threats in the house at bay. Tiffany, Kyland, Claire, X, Christian, Alyssa, Sarah Beth, and Derek X. They were the new power, and they decided to target the Aces team with Brent and Whitney being the next two to go. Brent was an ally of Frenchie's and Whitney was all alone, so easy pickings. X wanted Whitney out next, but had to be convinced that Brent was the bigger target as everyone in the house wanted him gone first, including Whitney. The Royal Flush managed to convince the Aces to throw the next HOH to the Kings under the guise that the Jokers were the targets, when in fact it was the Aces. They did so, and hey, look at that, X became the third HOH of the season. While he wanted Whitney gone to cull some of the women from the game, this would be 3 straight men if Brent were to go. Eventually he came around, pretending to use Brent as a pawn, which Brent didn't believe, and Brent and Brittany were nominated. Christian won the veto and had no plans to use it, so Brent could get blindsided, and it was as easy as that. Well, sort of. It's worth noting that Derek X and Claire didn't trust X all that much and wanted to target him sooner than later. To them, X was a big threat, a likable guy with a good physique who would win a lot of comps if given the opportunity. Meanwhile, Tiffany was close with Kyland, Claire, and Derek X, and they had formed a new sub-alliance called the Detectives. These 4 held the most power of all and were putting the pieces of the house together to understand where everyone stood, and as they saw it, the Jokers were a bit of a joke of a team between Derek F., Azza, and Britt. The Aces were being demolished with Whitney going out next, leaving only Hannah, who was on their side, and then the Aces also had Derek X, who was a detective, and then you had the Queens, all 3 of whom were in this core 4 alliance. This left the Kings, a powerful team all being protected by the Royal Flush, all who were working together well enough by this point and had a common bond of being on the same team. A new plan was being hatched going into week 4 to split the Kings up, get them to go after each other, and divide and conquer from within. And while it sounds like it's not looking great for X here as the Kings are being targeted and he's one of the top of the hit list, this is also where the second major event of his path to victory takes place. Derek X pushes for X to be the next target, and Tiffany goes to bed, sleeps on this, wakes up the next morning and tells the cameras on the live feeds she had an epiphany and she knows what she needs to do. She needs to loop in X. She needs to loop in Kai, she needs to loop in Azza and Big D, and she needs to solidify the cookout. This path was going to be more difficult than what she naturally was forming, but to her it was important not to take out X so soon. She couldn't do it for the culture, and so her new master plan was set. The cookout was formalized this week when Tiff brought it to the other 4 players and laid out how the season-long plan would go. Mirroring the Brigade Alliance structure from Season 12, each of them would find side partners to rope in as parachute alliances, visible to the whole house. In the event any of the cookout members were targeted, they would be nominated next to their parachute partner, and the parachute would get evicted. You know, kind of softening the blow when they hit the ground. Tiffany had Claire, Kyland had Sarah Beth, Big D and Azza had Brittany, and X had Christian and Alyssa. Hannah was also being encouraged to get closer to Derek X, although Tiff was close with DX, Derek X. With Whitney being the only player unaccounted for and the next target, the chessboard was laid out before them, and the path became a lot clearer than just looking out for each other. And yeah, it goes without saying, but X was down for all of this. This was his best case scenario. A ride to the final 6 where he was likely to just win out on comps? How could he say no? But of course, this was also important for him from the cultural perspective too. It it just happened to go hand in hand. He was in a good spot both ways. On the flip side, Alyssa wanted to target Asa going into week 4, given how emotional she was over Brittany being a 2-week pawn. X tried to steer Alyssa away from Asa by focusing on the aces, particularly nominating Whitney, and in week 4, when Christian won the next HOH, granting X safety for the week as the teams were still a thing, Christian was all ears about possibly putting Asa up next to Whitney. X tried to swing that back to Hannah going up as an easier pawn, but then Sarah Beth showed up and was like, what if we do Asa next to Hannah? X was flustered and couldn't convince his team other than to make them realize if they target a joker, the other jokers will get mad. So it's best to focus on the aces. Whitney and Hannah went up, but after Christian won the veto and didn't use it, the target shifted from Whitney to Hannah. Hannah was the last person to be brought into the cookout. Hannah was somebody they wanted to protect all the way to the final 6. Christian, Alyssa, and Sarah Beth, the Kings team, were pushing hard within their alliance for Hannah to go. And it was only once Hannah managed to talk to Christian and get herself out of being the primary target did the cookout have a major sigh of relief. X was not able to do that. He actually considered having a talk about cutting Hannah loose early, but thankfully Hannah did her thing and the day was saved. But the day was not fully saved because Derek X still wanted to target X next. Tiffany had to shift Derek X's target to Christian in week 4 after she planted the idea that Christian held X and Alyssa together the most. He was the glue, so if the shot was going to be at the Kings, it should be Christian. Derek X won the week 5 HOH and X made a deal with him to be safe, as did Alyssa, and although X tried to include his entire Kings team after the fact, DX wasn't having any of that. Christian was the target, but he first put up Brittany and Sarah Beth as pawns. X didn't realize Christian was going to be backdoored as he was closer to Christian and viewed him as an essential part of his mid-game plans. He wanted both Christian and Alyssa to at least make jury, if not further, serving as shields, but Tiffany had to try to get him to realize, after many repeated conversations, that Christian was going to be backdoored, that this was the plan, and it was gonna be fine. When Christian was put up after the veto and X had to relinquish any semblance of control, he tried to encourage a flip on Sarah Beth instead. Tiffany actually was down for this, as was Alyssa, and Tiffany knew that she could get Claire, while X believed he could get Big D. This was enough to save Christian and oust SB. That is, until X realized he couldn't get Big D, or Asa for the matter, and when Tiff and X tried to get Brittany instead, this led to a division in the cookout that ultimately had X and Tiff settle for keeping the cookout intact and cutting Christian. Big D and Asa won that battle. Kyland won the next HOH, much to the frustration of the other cookout members. They wanted Big D, Asa, or Tiff to win it for the first time, and this caused some frustration from within. By now, Tiffany had settled on taking Hannah and X with her to the final 3, as Kyland wasn't trustworthy enough and was proving to be too strong of a player. Tiff wanted SB out next, but Kai was so close to her, it wouldn't make any sense for him to target her. The original idea was to target Alyssa next, but X made a stink about it with Kai, and so Kai, Tiff, and Hannah decided to just backdoor Alyssa after the veto and have X deal with it again like he did with Christian. Claire and Big D were put up instead, which caused Claire and DX to look sideways at Kai going forward. They ultimately began to realize how close Tiffany, Kyland, and Xavier were, all seemingly vouching for each other, and concluded that X had to be in way deeper than they realized. Despite Derek X trying to make deals with X for weeks, strategically getting closer to the guy because he didn't trust him, X was never that close with DX, and DX knew it. Which is kind of funny to consider because by the end of this week, X tries to finally get closer to DX, and then Hannah has to tell X, you gotta back off. She needs X going after DX in future weeks. X, that alliance ship has sailed. A new major twist pops up, with the players receiving Big Brother bucks based on their popularity. Both Brittany and Derek X received the most, and this shifted the target midweek from Alyssa to Brittany. If Britt was going to have the most money to buy the best items for the twist, she had to go first. She had to be evicted first. Alyssa and Kyland both won the veto due to the twist, and Kyland chose to use it on Claire to backdoor Britt. Britt would ultimately go this week, although there was a push from Claire and DX to try and save her, which Tiff had to quell as hard as she could because Britt was sitting next to Big D. SB won the next HOH, and Kylan had to kick it into high gear to get her to not target Xavier, which she really wanted to. She viewed X and Alyssa as the next biggest targets, and X was her number one target. That is, until Kylan talked her into thinking for herself by making the exact same nominations he did in the previous week. Claire and Big D went up, with Derek X now as the backdoor plan. Hannah convinced Derek X not to spend his BB bucks on the twist, guaranteeing he could get backdoored, and after Alyssa used hers and was able to save one of the noms, she chose to save Big D. And again, all a part of this twist, by random chance, X was forced on the block. Whoops, didn't want that to happen. X was annoyed that his game was now being put front and center for everyone, but well, I'd say it's pretty top of mind for a lot of people already. Either way, X beasted out in the veto comp to get himself off the block. He won the veto, but it did cost him something. He chose to take a punishment where he would automatically be the third nominee in the following week. He figured he would be safer after DX was backdoored, and he was kind of right, albeit it also kind of really wasn't necessary to take the punishment in the first place. He did have the cookout. DX was backdoored, and the cookout was continuing to get their +1s to do their dirty work. Week 8 saw Tiffany win HOH and finally get the chance to put up Kylan and Sarah Beth, with X as that third nominee. The final week for the BB Bucks twist came into play, and Tiffany managed to convince Claire to win the biggest prize. Claire would become the new secret HOH, take over for Tiff, and then do exactly what Tiffany did anyway. Kind of like Sarah Beth with Kylan in the previous week. This also meant that Claire couldn't win the next HOH, only increasing the odds of a cookout member winning. Hannah won the veto, took X off the block, meaning SB was now doomed. SB was voted out, and we now get to the third most important major event for X of this season. The plan was for either Azah or Big D to win the next HOH. The cookout wanted Claire or Alyssa to go next, most likely Claire if they had a pick, and X was pushing for that to be the order going into the week. Claire first, then Alyssa. We all agree? This meant neither X nor Tiffany could win the HOH because they needed to continue to hide their alliance, and if X won, he couldn't target Alyssa. That wouldn't make any sense. The same goes for Tiffany and Claire. They had to stick to the script. Well, as it turned out, Tiff won the HOH anyway, and this infuriated X. He would spend the rest of the week being quite annoyed at Tiff, dragging her name to the rest of the cookout, and it would basically burn Tiff's good graces with X going forward. X now wanted Tiff out first from the cookout, despite planning to take her to the final 3 alongside Hannah up to this point, and he easily got Big D and Azah on his side too. Both of them had beef with Tiffany throughout the season, and while X did mediate a few conversations between them to keep the CO intact, this was a recurring occasion where he and Hannah kept feeling like the true mother and father of their alliance. X was now ready to solidify a boot order within the Power Alliance, and Tiff was first out. Tiff put up Alyssa and X, and the target was Alyssa, but then Alyssa won the veto, and oh my god, crap. What are we gonna do? What is the script supposed to do now? Tiff was in a pickle. She had to explain to Claire what was going on. She basically spelled out the cookout to her without straight up saying it, and Claire understood. Took it like a champ. Would later actually become a champ with Derek X on The Amazing Race. Tiff put up Claire, and the deed was done. Claire was a goner at Tiff's hands, and X had never felt so vindicated. This is what you get when you don't follow the script. This also proved to be a double eviction, and with Claire out the door, all sights were set on Alyssa. Hannah won the HOH, she put up Alyssa and X, and after X swiftly won the veto with ease, took himself down, and Kylan was replaced and Alyssa was gone. The cookout had done it. They reached the final 6 intact, all of them made it, and their goal was complete. And now it was time to cannibalize themselves. Kylan won the next HOH, and Tiffany and Hannah tried their hardest to get him to turn on X. But after Tiffany's previous HOH disaster win, Kylan realized Tiffany was no longer a player he could count on. And this is what I mean when I talk about the third most important thing for X's game, because, oh boy, Kylan, so much to talk about. You see, for much of the season, Kylan believed he was playing the best game, a game worthy of the win. And he really wanted to prove to the world he could do it. And along the way, he kept being reminded that X was the biggest threat. X had the best social game. X was going to be a comp beast. And X was the frontrunner. X was consistently targeted, and yet so many people kept vouching for him every week. How could he not be perceived as the threat? How could the rest of the house not target him, given his reputation? Internet, let me ask you, which comes first, the resume or the reputation? But Kyland had posited weeks ago to Sarah Beth that he actually wanted to prove he was the best by beating the best. This was a long-term strategy for Kai, going beyond the game to prove that he was the ultimate champion. He was the ultimate victor in the road to victory. When Tiffany did what she did, when she sullied her name, when she won that HOH against the plan, against the script, she was selfish. X was right. Tiff wasn't a worthy competitor. And with Hannah backing Tiffany up and wanting X out too, because, he was deemed the biggest threat, Kyland chose to nominate Tiffany and Hannah and pivot towards working with X. He made a final 2 deal with X called The Gentleman. They were going to be gents, shake on it, and be the final 2. As Kyland put it, Kobe and Shaq, Goku and Vegeta, side by side, sitting in the final 2. This was their game to lose. And when Kai approached X with this deal, X was like, sure, let's go. Why not? Tiffany was taken out first, followed by Hannah in the double eviction right after at the hands of Azah winning HOH, and then X won the final 4 HOH, putting him in the finale. After X also won the final veto of the season, it at first seemed like it was gonna be that all guys final 3, until things changed. Because throughout most of the season, Azah had a bit of a crush on X and was happy to work with her Joker teammate, Big D. They were happy going to the final 3 with X for a while. Azah even took out Hannah in the double eviction when she could have both put up X and Kai, but Kai saved X with the veto as he was left off the block. Despite Kai being all in on X in that final 2, the Gentleman, and also despite Big D being all in on X, meaning X was guaranteed final 2 no matter what with both Kai and Big D in the final 3, X convinced Big D to evict Kai over Azah because X believed Kai was his biggest threat. And yeah, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you just go for the easier win, Kai? As Sarah Beth put it weeks ago, that's not a good strategy. That's just asking to lose.
I wanted to stay focused on the goal at hand, which meant no distractions.
You're the only person I trust, completely. So I'm gonna do whatever you tell me to do.
I made a final 2 with Big D on day 1, but the most important alliance I joined was none other than the Cookout.
All right, Cookout. I like that. I like that. That's for the culture.
I would say I was definitely the glue that kept the Cookout together. Then Kyland offered me a final 2, which I accepted.
We equally need each other to make it to the final 2 chairs. I want to, and I think you want to. Yeah, the Gentleman it is.
Even though Kyland promised to take me to the final 2, when it comes down to it, this is the game of Big Brother. Kyland's a big threat. I had to go with the odds, which meant Kyland had to go.
X was in the final 3 with Azah and Big D, and after Azah and Big D had some drama unfold at the final 3, Azah decided that she would rather see herself or X win than let Big D get a chance to beat her at the final 2, which likely does not happen, but I guess we'll never know for sure. X won the final 3 HOH against Azah, evicted her, and then handily crushed Big D in the final 2 in front of the jury as they all voted for him to win with his name on every single key. Xavier won by a final jury vote of 9-0, the 3rd unanimous vote ever, and he was the champion of Big Brother 23.
Congratulations, Xavier. You are the winner of Big Brother.
Taylor Hale entered the Big Brother 24 house as a 27-year-old personal stylist who was excited to partake in a show she had just discovered the year before. Unlike many winners as of late, Taylor didn't know Big Brother that well, not since Hayden on season 12 did a winner not know the show much going into the game. But Taylor discovered it after season 23. She loved it, and here she was. She connected initially with Joseph, Michael, and Brittany, and believed that she was working with most of the women in the house. Taylor was very much interested in working with the women, which, if she knew the history of Big Brother, she would know is a bit of a gamble. Taylor believed that she could trust most of the women, but as it turned out, they had created an all-women's alliance called the Girls, and it included every woman on the cast except for Taylor. and Nicole. Taylor didn't know this, and she also didn't know how several players on the cast did not seem to like her based on their first impression of her. They knew she had a pageant history, which meant she might be more cutthroat. She also hung out with the guys a lot, played pool with them, and to the women, they thought that she wasn't trustworthy. She was also judged as someone who might be quick to anger. She might get loud and blow up if it went against her. Huh, interesting you put it that way. One day she asked Turner to do his dishes, and he was now against her for the foreseeable future. Really, Turner? Jasmine misconstrued a remark from Taylor and thought she called her fat. And as early as day 4, several women encouraged Taylor to wear her finale dress as a bit of a fashion show type gig just for fun. And so she did it to fit in, and then several of these women judged her for it and held it against her. Not off to the best start. Taylor believed that she could work with Monty and had heard how he might be an early target for the women. And so she tried to loop in Monty to work closer with Paloma and a few other women to bring them all closer. She liked Monty and wanted him to stick around. And instead, Monty snitched on Taylor to the women about this, and they were set on her being the first boot. And that is just in the first few days. Daniel won that first HOH and initially targeted Michael with Terrence as a pawn. But Michael won the veto, and this meant that Taylor was available to be backdoored. She was put up on the block as the target, and her world came crashing down around her. Taylor felt it really hard. She felt isolated and alone, and she was absolutely the underdog. Week 1, and she's already going home? For what? Taylor spoke to a bunch of the people in the house about these misunderstandings, but even then, the target was still set. That being said, she did have Michael and Brittany in her corner. Alyssa also liked Taylor, as did Joseph. You would think that with everything I've said thus far about Taylor, we'd be talking about the road to defeat with the first boot, but no. Instead of Taylor going, the eviction got canceled after Paloma, the head honcho against Taylor, quit the game as she began to spiral. She was barely sleeping, was becoming increasingly incoherent, conspiring against the producers to split the money, and by the end of the week, she left the game, and the producers canceled the eviction. Although it's worth noting that a twist was going to happen if the eviction went through, where Taylor would compete in a comp against either Paloma or Alyssa. It is a big premiere night twist, and it was also a comp that we saw Taylor compete in the future, where she beat Alyssa. So had the eviction gone through and Taylor was voted out, had this comp happen week 1, Taylor almost certainly would have survived. Week 2 saw Jasmine win HOH, and the target was still set on Taylor. As an act of kindness, Pooch volunteered himself to be a pawn next to her on the block, believing this would be an easy week, and it would allow him to start building a winning resume. So they both went up, and then Michael won the veto, didn't use it, and the nominations were locked. Taylor was in a lot of trouble again. But let's rewind a second to explain the state of the house this week, because it wasn't just the house against Taylor. Paloma had formed a week 1 alliance called Mamba that would eventually be called Pose Pack in her honor, that included a mishmash of players. Part of the reason that Monty trusted several of these women is because he was in an alliance with them. This alliance also had Alyssa, Amira, Michael, Kyle, and they would then swap out Paloma for Nicole in week 2. Pooch also started an all-guys alliance that included every guy except Michael and Terrence. So when Pooch volunteered to go up on the block as a pawn, he felt pretty good because he believed that he had the guys on his side. Except he didn't, because Daniel and Kyle leaked the alliance at different times, and Pose Pack knew it existed. When Taylor was on the block in week 2, she spent the week getting to know the other players, such as Jasmine, Monty, as well as Nicole. She also had a weird crush on Daniel for a minute. She connected strongly with Turner, who told her about his rug business back home, something he wasn't publicly sharing at the time. Jasmine realized she could use Taylor as a smokescreen to blindside Pooch and the guys and break them up. The women realized the men might steamroll if it's first Paloma that goes out and then Taylor right after. Which one of them were next? Pooch became the target, and this left a few of the men feeling like they got the short end of the stick and weren't calling the shots. Kyle, Joseph, and Monty began to feel iffy about Pooch leaving, but they didn't have the numbers, and so Pooch was blindsided. At the same time, Michael and Brittany brought Taylor into a Final 3 alliance, and Taylor was totally up for it. Things were actually starting to look up for Taylor all of a sudden. She had allies, she wasn't being saved by a twist, she survived the block. Up and up. And then down and down, a new twist happened called the Festy Besties, where everyone in the house now had to pick a partner, and together they would play the game as duos for the next 3 weeks. While Pose Pack was breaking apart and there was so much dissension and the gender divide were causing the house tension to heat up and shots about to get fired, this twist caused them to huddle back together to ensure safety in a game that was suddenly unpredictable and unknown. Each member of Pose Pack picked a player to pick peppers on to buddy up with someone not in the alliance. And Taylor was stuck with Nicole. Nicole picked Taylor as her partner, believing she was an easy target to sit next to for the duration of the twist. Turner won HOH, and the target fell back onto Taylor for a third straight week. Instead of trying to navigate a twisty new format, the Loose Alliance decided to just default to their previous house target. Turner was fine with it, and the plan this time was to just backdoor Taylor instead of nominate her straight away. Brittany and Michael went up as the pawns with the plan for just about anyone to take them both down and put up Nicole and Taylor. This week also caused more tension to arise in the game when Nicole began to feel bad about possibly looking like the bad guy, the villain in the dynamic, as she was backdooring Taylor as her partner. Nicole could tell that she was going to be painted as a villain on the TV broadcast episodes to the rest of the country, and so she had a breakdown. And Taylor didn't understand what was going on, and she thought that it might be something personal affecting Nicole. She tried to comfort Nicole, but Nicole, Daniel, and even Terrence believed that this was more manipulation on Taylor's part to further break Nicole down. And they began to blame Taylor for Paloma's spiraling and quit in week 1, which, by the way, Taylor had nothing to do with. To them, this was a similar situation, and Taylor comforting Nicole, saying that she would support Nicole in whatever happened, was misconstrued as Taylor pushing Nicole to quit. Around the same time, a new power alliance had formed with a majority of the women: Alyssa, Amira, Jasmine, Nicole, Daniel, and Terrence. They called themselves Old School and were only a few days old before Alyssa ratted them out to Kyle, her wannabe showmance. Alyssa really wanted to get with Kyle, but he was playing hard to get. And so she told him about this new group just to give him a heads up. Kyle immediately realized he was no longer in a good spot. People were making majority alliances behind his back, and he ran this back to Monty and Joseph. And they then pulled in Turner to create a new all-guys alliance called the Pound. You know, after Pooch. In a funny twist of fate, Nicole and Daniel blew up on Taylor not long after that misunderstanding occurred, and it was not a good look for Nicole or Daniel. Yeah, they were absolutely the villains.
Hey, chips before a workout?
Just stop. From this point on, just stop.
With the Lays?
Taylor's reputation was still haunting her from the previous weeks, but this time the game was taking precedence over the personal pettiness. The Pound met up and decided they needed to create an opposing alliance to go against Old School. They wanted to get Michael and Brittany and then Taylor to round it off. They would have Turner, the current HOH, as well as the numbers on their side after this week, and just like that, a coup was staged. The Pound brought in Michael, Britt, and Taylor. They all agreed to work together as the new power alliance, and the leftovers were formed. Taylor was now in a good spot, and her alliance wanted to keep up the appearance of them not working together. So after Britt and Michael won the veto and took themselves off the block, the plan was going to be for them to still smear Taylor's name to them, to the other side of the house, as much as usual, but Turner was going to have a change of heart, which he actually did after watching Nicole and Daniel's behavior, and he would put up Amira and Terrence instead, because Amira was the brains of the other side of the house, the biggest threat, and so he did. And the house erupted in chaos. Taylor took her time to talk to her opposition and listen to them, hear their pitches to stay, get to know them a little better, but Amira was the target, and just like that, Amira was gone. The leftovers stormed the gates, seized the castle, and won the day. The leftovers would begin to control a lot of the game going forward, but the inner dynamics week to week would shift within them and cause feathers to get ruffled and factions to form within. Monty won the week 4 HOH and put up Alyssa and Indy with a chance to backdoor Nicole, And at first, Kyle actually wanted Alyssa to get backdoored to remove her distracting him from the game, or get her voted out at the least. She was already on the block. But then Kyle and Daniel won the veto, and Daniel could overrule Kyle's decision on whether the veto should be used or not. And Daniel was convinced that he had to use the veto to save Alyssa and Indy, believing Taylor was still a target, and Daniel had the votes to get Taylor out over Nicole. Daniel was wrong, and he instead unintentionally sent his closest ally on the block and out the door. That said, by the end of the week, Kyle had changed his tune with Alyssa, and this would lead to a rift forming later on in the game. Michael won the HOH in week 5 and wanted to backdoor Daniel, so he nominated Joseph, Monty, and Terrence. After Michael won the veto, Daniel and Kyle took the block, and Daniel was a goner. This was also around the time where Kyle began to get sketched out, believing Monty and Joseph had a thing going on and would need to get split up sooner than later. Originally, he pitched to Michael to cut them out of the alliance, but keep Taylor. But then he later believed that Taylor was also possibly flirting with Joseph and prioritizing him over anyone else. Kyle speculated that a new cookout could have been forming with the minorities in the house, including Indy, a Brazilian, as well as Jasmine and Terrence. Even though Taylor didn't get along with Jasmine or Terrence or Indy much at all, Kyle was paranoid and pitched the idea to Michael and Brittany about bringing in Turner and Alyssa to form a counter alliance just in case. Michael and Britt were not up for it and didn't really think they had to worry about anything, but this bit of speculation would later cause a lot of drama to occur. After Daniel left, Taylor won the wall comp and became the new HOH. Her game had been on an upward trajectory each week. She was in a good spot and riding high and safe to the final 10. But she also didn't really know where to go with this HOH power and chose to protect all of the women in the house first, so she wanted Terrence out next. Initially, she did pitch to Monty and Turner to be pawns for her so she wouldn't have to put a woman up, but this didn't really go over well with them and would pretty much burn her relationship with Turner for the rest of the season. Joseph also got a bit extra and considered going up as a pawn, but then decided otherwise. Eventually, she nominated Indy and Terrence, and then Kyle won the veto, and the plan seemed simple. Terrence should go. Except that wasn't the case at all, as initially Taylor considered using Alyssa as a pawn, with a valid excuse that Alyssa took a prize from Taylor in a previous veto comp weeks ago. Joseph managed to convince Taylor that it was best for the leftovers if Alyssa left next, as she was the most competent player on the other side, and it would be good for Taylor's game. Kyle, however, was now showmancing Alyssa and did not feel comfortable being her executioner, given he won the veto. He did not want to get Alyssa out, despite pitching for it needing to happen sooner than later weeks ago. But his feelings changed, and he wanted Alyssa around for his game going forward, and he consulted Michael and Brittany about this, to which they agreed with him. Taylor then consulted Michael and Britt too, to which they agreed with her points as well. Really, Michael and Britt played the middle, played Taylor, and not too effectively, and with Joseph being close to Taylor, Kyle was now feeling the walls closing in around him and that he couldn't rely on the leftovers as much as he had wanted. The funny thing is that Taylor was actually considering taking a shot at Monty this week because they were the least close of anyone in the leftovers from her perspective, but regardless, Indy was voted out as being a bigger threat than Terrence. The final 10 saw another major twist occur where the house was split into two groups of 5, where Michael was the HOH for the inside group and Terrence won the HOH for the outside group. Michael got to pick his group and he wanted to protect Brittany and Taylor, so he picked both of them, and then also Monty and Jasmine, with Jasmine being his target. Terrence had the other half of the house, and his target was Joseph. Michael's side of the house, who all lived indoors for the week, weren't really that interesting to talk about. Brittany won the veto, and Jasmine was done for. Taylor spent this week talking to Monty about positioning in the future to target Michael because Michael had won so many comps at this point, he was too big of a threat. Monty was down for it. She also talked to Brittany about this, and Britt seemed pretty open to the idea for now. Lastly, Taylor bonded with Jasmine more than anyone else on the inside on her way out the door, reconciling their differences and having a nice heart-to-heart. On the literal flip side of the house, Kyle ratted out the leftovers to Terrence and Alyssa and managed to get them onto his side alongside Turner, to which they formed a new 4-person alliance called the After Party. Joseph was the target, he didn't win the veto, and even though Joseph fought tooth and nail to survive, even throwing Taylor under the bus at one point. It wasn't meant to be. The game had changed. The dynamics had totally shifted with Kyle's turn, and the inside four had no idea what was about to hit them. Taylor was heartbroken to see Joseph evicted upon the two groups merging together. She didn't get to say goodbye, and what's more, it seemed kind of fishy how it all went down on the outside. Turner won the next HOH, and their suspicions came to fruition when he nominated Taylor and Brittany as pawns, with the plan to backdoor Michael. Although Taylor wanted Michael out eventually, it was not under these circumstances. Turner did consider not actually doing this, but Kyle managed to keep him at bay. However, Kyle failed to keep Michael at bay, and after Michael won the veto and planned to use it on Brittany to take her off, which would have forced Monty on the block as the next target for Kyle and the after party, instead, Michael had an ace up his sleeve. He revealed to everyone in the house about Kyle's shifty suspicions about the minorities teaming up and how Kyle had pitched an all-white alliance to counter it weeks prior. Michael and Brittany used this to turn the tide against Kyle, to get Turner to feel sideways about Kyle. Turner was half committed to Kyle's plan, but after hearing this, he wanted out. Taylor didn't have anything to do with this. She was obviously flummoxed by the notion that she was working with Jasmine or Terrence or Indy, but she still took the time to talk to Kyle about everything and gave him the space to explain himself, listen to him, and have an open and just real conversation. Turner would go on to put Kyle on the block next to Taylor, and even though Terrence still tried to rally to get Taylor out, it was for naught. Michael won the next HOH, and his target was set on Terrence. He made a deal with Turner to not go after him if he got rid of Kyle, and he was gonna stick to it. Alyssa and Terrence went up, Michael won the veto, didn't use it, and Terrence was evicted. However, in spite of this week seemingly being straightforward on paper, a lot went down to set up the endgame of the season. First, Alyssa attempted to put together an all-women's alliance with Taylor and Brittany, recognizing if they got the men to turn on each other, the women could come out on top. It wasn't all that serious, and Brittany actually made a comment to Turner about it being a thing before it was even a thing. She just thought Alyssa would do it, and she did, and Turner told Monty about what the women were planning after this week. The two guys got sketched out, and they ran to Michael to form a counter guys alliance, where the three of them would take each other to the final three. Michael now seemingly had Taylor and Britt on one side, and Monty and Turner on the other. He was the biggest comp beast of the season by far, and was in between two sides targeting each other. It's almost too good to be true, but we have seen previous winners be in similar spots before. Well, it all seems so perfect, except for the part where Taylor showed up, because Taylor advocated all week for Monty and Turner to turn on Michael going into the very likely double eviction. But Monty and Turner were not sure that they wanted this. They just made a deal with Michael. They wanted to stick to it. And how could they trust Taylor when she was working with the women in secret? One conversation a few days before the eviction, Taylor revealed to Monty this women's alliance and how it meant nothing. Importantly though, she revealed this unprompted to Monty. She didn't know that he knew about it. And after talking more with her, he realized Taylor was legit in his corner with Turner and wanted to turn on Michael. Taylor also talked with Turner about this big move as well, and so on the eve of the eviction, the night before, Monty and Turner finally met up and got on the same page. Because they now both felt good about Taylor, they wanted to take the shot at Michael if the opportunity presented itself. And it did. Turner won the HOH at the double eviction, Monty won the veto, and Michael was sent packing. Taylor rallied the boys to her side, the two guys who less than 24 hours ago wanted to take Michael to that final three, and managed to carve a path for herself to have a little more leeway in the end. Monty won the final 5 HOH and nominated Brittany and Alyssa, but Britt won the veto. This meant Monty had to decide between Taylor and Turner who would go up in her place. Taylor pitched for Turner, as did Brittany, but Monty knew that he needed Turner as a shield, and so Taylor sat next to Alyssa. Monty got Turner to swear that if he did not put him on the block, Turner would evict Alyssa, not Taylor, and Turner promised he would. On the flip side, Brittany decided that she would now rather get Taylor out and keep Alyssa because she thought Alyssa was weaker, just as a last-ditch effort to shake up the game, and it didn't work as Turner didn't budge. Alyssa tried to hold Turner's relationship with her outside of the game hostage if he didn't vote for her to stay. Turner really did not appreciate that, and so in a 1-to-1 tie, Monty evicted Alyssa over Taylor. And then Taylor won the final 4 HOH and secured her spot in the final 3, hoping to send Turner to the jury next. Monty won the veto, and while Brittany pitched her case all week for Monty to take out Turner, and Taylor was willing to try to help her as best she could, Monty knew it would be better for his game if Turner was there with him. Turner planned to take Monty to the final 2, whereas Brittany never wanted to. Monty knew that. And eventually, Brittany let go and just told Taylor she was rooting for her to beat the guys. Brittany was evicted. Taylor planned to take Monty to the final 2 if she won the last HOH, as did Turner. So really, the big question was, who would Monty take? For the past few weeks, Taylor had grown close to Monty and bonded with him. And after the two of them shared back-to-back HOHs at the Final 5 and the Final 4, this led to them getting even closer than just the usual. From beyond flirting to, well, the two of them became emotionally entangled. They really went on a roller coaster of feelings, like a yo-yo, hot and cold, together, then fighting, then together again. Taylor drilled into Monty that Turner was the biggest threat to win the game, and after enough time had passed, the idea began to stick. This also was helped when Brittany said the same thing over and over in an attempt to get Monty to evict him over her. Taylor had spun this nice little web for Monty to get caught in while also having real feelings for the guy and liking him on a personal level. Monty felt the same and decided Turner was the biggest threat. When you think about it, all of the biggest weeks of the season were on his HOH. He was a very likable guy that got along with just about everyone. And Taylor had a reputation in the house for being cold, an ice princess. I mean, that's what Zingbot said anyway. That reputation she amassed in the early game was kind of paying off here. Turner won part 1, Monty won part 2, and then Monty narrowly edged out Turner in part 3 to become the final HOH. He evicted Turner and took Taylor to the final 2. And after all this time, Taylor was now able to face the jury wearing that same finale dress she put on back in week 1. Taylor absolutely demolished the jury Q&A and had one of the best final speeches in the history of the show. She had the jurors tearing up, smiling, and nodding their heads ready to vote for her. She spoke with conviction, talked about her journey to get here and how rough it was, but that had only served to build her up. She was used as a shield for so many, but in the end was a sword, and dare I say, the heart of the season.
Monty may have more blood on his hands than me, but as someone who has sat on this eviction block 6 times on an eviction night, I have bled out the most in this game, but I have bandaged myself together every single time and gotten up and continued to fight. I have overcome so much in this game, and I've come to understand that I am not a shield, I am a sword. I am not a victim, I am a victor. And if there is one word that is going to describe the entire season, it is resiliency. And if you are to ask yourself who the most resilient person of this season has been, it is me. I have never given up on myself, and I refuse to do it tonight when I'm sitting next to such a strong competitor. I can be the winner of this season, and I promise you will not do it in vain if you choose me tonight.
Taylor defeated Monty by a final vote of 8-1, with Turner saying that he would have voted for Taylor had he known that that's what everyone else was doing. Taylor became the winner of Big Brother 24 and won the America's Favorite House Guest Prize Award too, making her the winningest single season champion the show had ever seen. Quite a comeback from where her road to victory began.
Congratulations, Taylor! You are the winner of Big Brother.
Jag Bains entered the Big Brother 25 house as a 25-year-old truck company owner from Washington State. He was also a Sikh Punjabi Indian American, the first to ever play the game, and while he wanted to be cunning and strategic and represent his heritage well, he knew he was going to have to grapple with the notion of betraying his closest allies down the line. He knew that this was likely going to conflict with his morals, and he was going to have to be okay with drawing that line. Jag walked through that front door as a man with a plan. That plan being to iterate on the previous strategies laid out by the greats I have already covered in this series. You know, in a way, it's kind of fitting fitting that he's going to be the last one we talk about. Jag connected instantly with Riley, the first HOH of the season, and with her then formed his first Final Two Ride or Die alliance of the season. Jag wanted to take Riley to the end, and because she was the first HOH, a lot of players were coming to her and by proxy, Jag. Jag and Riley then brought in Blue to form a final three called Crowd Control. And from there, the three of them formed a final five with Matt and Cameron. From there, they then pulled in three more players, Corey, America, and Jared, to now have an 8-person mega alliance that took up nearly half the cast, and they called themselves Family Style. Jag was in a great spot in these early days, a core of an onion-like structured alliance where he could slowly peel away the outer layers until he was in the final 2 seats. Sounded like a great plan, something we saw previous winners such as Cody and Derek pull off to great effect. Unfortunately for Jag, this alliance would not hold for very long as 2 players defected rather quickly. The first being Cameron, who was also really close to Riley and wanted to create inroads with more players beyond just Family Style. And then Jared, who was secretly the son of Suri Fields, another player in the game, an iconic 4-time Survivor player. Jared leaked the alliance to Suri, and quickly Suri took action to counter it, and given her expertise playing these kind of games, she rallied the entire rest of the house against them and quickly picked them apart like a Black Widow. But Jag didn't really know any of this and wouldn't be privy to Jared and Suri's relationship for the entire season. Riley targeted the house target in Kirsten, who had a quick reputation for having loose lips, and Kirsten was taken out in week 1. Jag, meanwhile, bonded a lot with a few other players too. He shared a room with Blue and Matt and grew close to them, and he also enjoyed spending time with Corey and America. Week 2 saw Heisem win HOH, and this was a problem as he wasn't in Family Style and was instead one of the stronger players in the opposing Professors Alliance. Heisem wanted to target a combination of Family Style, and he set his sights on taking out Riley, and initially wanted to put up Jag next to her, but instead went to Cameron as a pawn, seeing as how Cameron had proven to have a strong connection with Riley in week 1. Jag's closest ally was now slated to go as early as week 2, and he would spend most of this week trying to rally the votes to keep her. The problem was that he needed at least 7 votes, and he knew that he could count on Matt, Blue, and he believed he had Jared. This meant he needed both the duo of Corey and America and Suri and Izzy to vote with him, realizing he couldn't just split these duos up. They were going to vote together. Jag would have numerous conversations all week between the pockets of players trying to rally the votes to keep Riley. And while each side said that they would go with him, they also left themselves an out by saying they didn't trust the other group to vote to keep Riley, and they didn't want to go against the house and not be with the numbers. Suri and Izzy would say Corey and America were flaky, meanwhile the same would go the other way, and Jag was running back and forth trying to reassure both sides they were all good, they had the votes. The truth is that Suri, Izzy, and Corey were working together and in cahoots and basically leading Jag on. No, they were leading him on. They were intentionally giving themselves plausible deniability when they all chose to vote Riley out, which is what they were going to do. Yes, there were times where they did want to flip it, but Jag didn't actually know this. It was just he was in the dark. Jag wasn't privy to all of this happening and was led astray all week, and in the 11th hour had to accept defeat, and Riley was unanimously evicted. Felicia won the week 3 HOH and set her sights on a new opportunity to make a big move. She nominated Cameron and Jag under the guise that the professors were still picking apart the Family Style Alliance, or the remnants of it anyway, but in reality, we're backdooring Heisem. Heisem had lost his alliance's trust when he was HOH in week 2, and Jag's opposition were ready to eat their own. Jag was the backup target if Heisem won the veto, but then Jag won the veto and he secured his safety. Heisem was put up in his place, and Heisem was backdoored. That said, to placate Jag, who was now in a state of disarray after losing his alliance and his closest ally in Riley, Suri, Izzy, Felicia, and Jared decided to create a fake alliance with Jag and his closest allies Matt and Blue, to pull them closer right before Heisem was backdoored. They wanted to snow Jag into believing he had a new home. This was now the final 7 to the end, and they were called the 7 Deadly Sins. To Jag, this was his real alliance. He was loyal to them, especially after they proved it with the Heisem backdoor, and Jag was ready to go to battle with them. Unfortunately for Jag, Week 4 saw Cameron win HOH, an ex-family style flipper who was now ready to take shots against Jag and Blue. Why Jag and Blue? Well, because the same people in the 7 Deadly Sins, Suri, Izzy, Felicia, they had formed a different alliance with Cameron and Red and Bowie Jane called Legend 25. They also included Matt in this alliance as he was getting in good with both Suri and Cameron, 2 opposing players who were now working together. Except Suri had a bunch of fake alliances and wasn't loyal to either of them. She just wanted to point her enemies at each other. She had Jag and Blue targeting Cam and Red and vice versa. And so when Cam won the Week 4 HOH, he nominated Jag and Blue. But it needs to be said that leading up to these nominations, Jag knew he was in deep trouble and could have avoided the block by comparing notes with Cam. They didn't realize it, but they held similar cards. Jag's refusal to play for himself and instead for the 7 Deadly Sins Alliance led to him being nominated as the primary target. He could have fought for himself, but as he said going into the game, he wanted to find an alliance and be loyal. This was him doing that. Unfortunately for him, this alliance wasn't real and a majority of them were against him. Red won the veto, didn't use it. Jag did not put up much of a fight. He felt like his days were numbered and he was right. Jag was facing imminent doom, and while he had cards to play and secrets to expose to potentially save himself, anything works, he instead chose not to. He went down with a sinking ship that was half abandoned for almost nothing. When I say it might be the worst gameplay of any winner in 25 seasons, I'm not being hyperbolic. Jag was evicted 10-0, and by all means, this normally would have been the end of his road. Not to victory, but to defeat. 13th place and a pre-juror. And it kind of makes me think now, what if Dan didn't do this on season 14, didn't expose the Quack Pack, and we didn't get the funeral? Well, Jag, this was your funeral.
By a vote of 10-0, Jag, you are evicted from the Big Brother house.
Fortunately for Jag, a secret power was in the game, and his buddy Matt, at this point his closest ally left in the house, had won it. Jag and Matt were thick as thieves and had formed a final 2 alliance called the Minutemen, wanting to rival the Hitmen of Cody and Derek. Matt had won this power through a twist that saw the 4 most popular players compete for a power over the previous week, and Jag actually happened to be in the top 4 alongside Matt. Jag was a likable guy both in the house and to the audience, clearly, but his gameplay left something to be desired. He was a bit too rigid in his plans and didn't adapt as the state of the game changed, and that caused him to get evicted. Matt used his power to save Jag, and suddenly Jag was no longer out of the game. The results of the week were null and void, and now a new HOH was about to be crowned, and that happened to be Jared. Jared decided he wanted to take a shot at Cam and Red. He nominated both of them, but all the while, Jag had been unsure how to feel about what just went down. He was evicted by his own alliance. What happened there? Jag was confused and would spend much of the next few weeks questioning his closest allies to get to the bottom of how exactly the votes landed on him. America, someone he wasn't aligned with but was close friends with him, tried to clue him in on the fact that Suri was clearly running the game. She knew this from Corey, who was close to Suri, but was growing distant as Jared proved to be a menace to Corey, like a mean older brother, and Corey was slowly losing faith in Jared. But Jag didn't believe America, and just like that, he instead fell back in line with the 7 Deadly Sins, and they were his plan until the end. He went right back into that fake alliance who just voted him out. Even worse, however, is that after Cameron won the veto, a scheme was hatched by Jared and Blue, one of Jag's closest allies, to put Jag back up on the block as an alleged pawn. Jag could prove that he was still good with the 7 Deadly Sins by being cool with this, even though he wasn't. And meanwhile, the Alliance would just use him as a pawn to get Red out. Jag didn't fight much though, and decided to just take another one for the fake team that didn't have his back, and he was put up next to Red after the veto was used. The problem was that Red was never the target for Jared or Suri, it was Cam, and since Cam was safe, the next target was going to revert back to the previous week. That being Jag. Cam was targeting Jag due to Legend 25, and Jared took a shot at Cam, but it missed. So now the plan was to go forward with Cam and Red still in the game and split up Jag, Matt, and Blue. And why would Blue be okay with this? I don't know. It's Blue. She was also in a showmance with Jared. Jag was about to get re-evicted and had no idea, sitting yet again on the block, believing he was a pawn, and it was only at the 11th hour, the night before the eviction, that things got dicey between Red and Cam and Suri, and so Suri decided to switch the target to Red and vote him out instead. Jag had no idea, but he was now spared. Cameron was blindsided by the Red eviction and then happened to an HOH and initially had Jag believing that he was going to target Jag all over again. But that was not the case. Cam gave Jag a deal for 1 week of safety because Cam had another plan in mind. Jag took the deal and was able to breathe easy. Cam unexpectedly nominated Izzy and Felicia with a secret plan to backdoor Suri. He had figured out that Suri was not on his side and she was the mastermind. Indeed, 2 + 2 = 4. Jared won the veto, however, and had no intentions on using it, and this created a big debacle between Cam, Jared, Izzy, Suri, and eventually Corey in America. Jag was mostly on the sidelines for a lot of the drama that was unraveling before him, but it basically came down to Corey and America deciding to flip the vote against Izzy whilst working with Matt and Jag. They also had Mimi on their side as she was closer to Felicia, who was also on the block next to Izzy, and they only needed 5 votes. Suri realized Izzy was in trouble and told Jared, and Jared then made up a lie about information that he received from Jag about the vote flipping against Izzy. Mind you, the vote flip against Izzy had just been established the day before. When Jared lied to Corey and Matt about Jag exposing this vote flip, they believed Jared because, it was true, the vote flip was happening, and because Jag had proven not to be the most reliable player in the game. Corey and Matt were frustrated with Jag, but of course they then talked to him, and immediately it came out that Jag never told Jared anything. Jared just made up a story to leak the info, and he got what he wanted. He got the truth. He now knew there was a flip happening, and this caused so much commotion.
Everything is just hitting the fan, and everyone is coming up and down stairs. It's like I'm the Grand Marshal of Cam's Chaos Week Parade.
Definitely want to clear the air.
Enough of this he said, she said. Let's just see if Jared's telling the truth.
Did I ever do that?
No, you never said that to me.
I never did.
Never said it to me.
Didn't Jared just come in and tell us that
Never said it
an
to
hour
me.
ago?
Jared is a liar. I don't know what Jared is doing, and I especially don't like that he's hurting my reputation with Corey and with my closest ally, Matt.
A huge blow up occurred. Jag was mostly just like chilling in the middle of it, watching the fight happen, and eventually Izzy was evicted. Corey in America had also spilled all of the tea at this point to Jag and managed to finally convince him to stop trusting the 7 deadly sins. They were fake. Corey knew this for weeks thanks to Suri, and Jag needed to believe Corey in America going forward. Jag woke up, dropped the alliance once and for all, although it took 3 weeks to get there. The game was now shifting and the power was up in the air with Izzy gone, Suri's second closest ally, but then Jared clutched it out and won the next HOH. He wanted to target Cam for Izzy's eviction and was planning to put up Jag next to Corey, but then settled on Corey and America as pawns for a Cameron backdoor. It's important to note for Jag's game here that Matt, Jag's closest ally, had made inroads with Suri leading up to this all happening, and it was Matt who was able to help encourage her and Jared not to go after Jag or himself. Of course, the problem continued that Suri and Jared liked Matt and not so much Jag, so if Cam found a way to win veto, it was likely going to be Jag going home this week. Except Jag won the veto instead, used it to take down Corey, and Cam was backdoored. A double eviction popped up, and Corey then won it, targeting Jared, his newly minted enemy after their previous blow-up. And when Matt won the veto and had to expose his double dealings with Suri and Jared and Corey in America, he chose not to use the veto and left Jared on the block. Suri was devastated, she was heartbroken, and Jared, her son, was evicted for about 5 minutes. Right, yeah, so another big twist occurred where both Cam and Jared re-entered the house as zombies, and one of them would come back into the game proper at the end of the week. It was this week that Matt placed the blame for his betrayal of Cirie and Jared on the likes of Corey. Meanwhile, Matt then brought in Cam as a zombie to form a working alliance alongside Jag. The three of them could work together going forward if Cam were to return. This proved to be a great move, as Cam did in fact return to the game and even went on to win the next HOH. Cam was in cahoots with Matt and Jag, and the three of them formed an alliance called the Fugitives. And Cam decided that he wanted to take out Felicia before the jury began because he thought that she would be an unreliable juror. It was also this week that Matt looped in Bowie Jane as an extra player on their side too. Bowie never really had a home most of the season and connected with Jag and Matt over their shared experience of being deceived heavily by Cirie. Cam won the veto and strongly considered using it to backdoor Corey instead of taking out Felicia, but Jag was able to convince both Matt and Cam that it was too soon to take out Corey. Mostly, Jag wanted to keep Corey, as Corey was on Jag's side for the immediate future. Jag was considering taking Corey to the Final Four even. What were Felicia and Mimi doing for him? Normally, Matt was getting his way more than Jag in their duo, but this time, Jag was able to talk Cam down from taking the shot, as it meant Corey and America could target Blue. Meanwhile, Blue could target Corey and America. Meanwhile, the vote also then flipped to take out Mimi instead of Felicia, as Mimi was just better at competitions. Bowie Jane then unexpectedly won her first comp of the season as she became the next HOH, and she nominated Cirie and Felicia. However, Matt had reasoned with Jag to spare Corey in the previous week, and in return, Jag would go with Matt to target Cam in the following week. Matt didn't want to work with Cam any longer. The Fugitives was just like a 1 week, 2 week cover. He only wanted him for a shield for like a week or two. Cam was the best at comps in the game by far. But Jag thought they should wait to take him out. Save him as a shield for down the line. Matt insisted, however, so Jag reasoned with him to have a trade of targets. Corey was spared at the final 10, and in return, Jag would go along with the plan to backdoor Cam at the final 9. The only hiccup now was convincing Bowie Jane to take the shot. She was the HOH. Jag won the veto and was ready to use it, and he made a good appeal to Bowie's sense of team unity to take that shot. Cam had doubted Bowie for like a hot minute about her loyalty, and Jag took advantage of that to convince her to cut Cam. She did not want to be doubted. She just wanted a strong team of people that believed in her, and Jag and Matt were giving that to her. Bowie also never liked Cam that much anyway, so boom. Cam was nominated again and evicted again. Would Jag suffer that same fate? It needs to be said that the moment Cam was evicted, the game basically was a done deal from here on out. Jag, Matt, and Bowie would go on to win every single HOH and veto from the final 9 to the final 3. Jag would personally win 8 of the next 12 competitions, breaking the single season record and winning the most vetoes of anyone. Of course, it wasn't just smooth sailing to get to that point. There was a bit of a bumpy, ugly ride to get there, but still, Jag's physical game would come up incredibly clutch from here on out and be his saving grace week in and week out until the final 2. Everyone not in this trio alliance of himself, Matt, and Bowie, of which they now called themselves the Mafia, were toast. Jag won the final 8 HOH, a secret power HOH that made him quote-unquote invisible, anonymous, except everyone knew he was HOH because he was a terrible liar, and he told half of them anyway. Jag wanted to take out Blue this week. She was the strongest in comps, and he secretly put her up next to Felicia. Jag would win the veto too. However, there was a second veto on offer, and Blue managed to win it, throwing a spanner in the works for Jag. With 2 vetoes in the game, Jag decided to finally make the move, pull the ripcord, blindside both Corey and America, putting them both up on the block at the same time. America was fuming. Corey tried to find a way out, but it was all for naught as Bowie was on Jag's side through it all, despite seeming like the swing vote. Well, I should actually say there was a slight debacle this week, however, between Jag and Bowie when Jag unintentionally brought her to tears after he strongly considered nominating her as a pawn next to Felicia. He wanted to backdoor Blue, but Bowie really didn't like the idea of Jag doing this, of putting her up as a pawn. She was finally feeling good about her allies. Ultimately, he didn't do it after seeing her strong reaction, but This move really upset Bowie. With Jag being the invisible HOH, this meant that he could also compete in the next comp too, completely breaking the format of the game. Jag competed and won the next HOH as well, winning back-to-back HOHs, and it was a good thing this twist broke the format as Suri was about to win it instead, and she was gunning after Jag. But Jag won the final 7 HOH and tricked Blue into thinking that she could be a pawn next to America, with America being the target. Jag won the veto, didn't use it, and even though Suri could see through the ruse and had convinced Felicia and Blue what the deal was, it didn't really matter. Blue was evicted 4-0. A second double eviction popped up. Bowie won her second HOH of the season, and to prove just how loyal she was to the Mafia, she put up America and Felicia. Matt won the veto, didn't use it. America was now evicted. Matt won the final 5 HOH and decided to put up both Suri and Felicia. Matt had also disclosed to Suri in the prior week before the double that he was keen to take a shot at Jag had the opportunity presented itself. Suri told Felicia about this, who then went and told Jag about this, hoping to throw Suri under the bus. And Jag then confronted Matt. Matt denied it, and Jag believed him, believing it was just Felicia being Felicia. But still, it was true. Matt did say this, he did want to do it. But Jag was becoming a veto king, and he won the final 5 veto, keeping Suri and Felicia on the block, and he even then convinced Matt to evict Suri this week over Felicia. Jag recognized Suri was the biggest threat, and she was close with Matt, and so Matt listened to Jag as a way to prove to him that he was loyal to the Minutemen. Jag had kind of boxed out Matt from working with Suri, and Matt let Jag call this shot. Suri was the next to be evicted over Felicia. This would go on to be a major notch in Jag's belt over Matt. Jag also knew that Matt was being well received by much of the jury up to this point, and that Jag would have a tough time against him in their final 2, something Jag was still up for. To cover his bases, he roped in Bowie, and they agreed to make a final 2 deal of their own. Bowie would take Jag to the final 2 as Matt was too big of a threat, and vice versa. The Mafia trio were now in that final 4, and leading up to this HOH, they wanted to guarantee Felicia wouldn't win it. They created a plan called Operation Pressure Cracker, where they basically would exclude Felicia from hanging out with them, and then they would also try to keep her up as late as possible to prevent her from being in her best shape come the comp. Felicia called Jag out for this, and he denied doing it, and in turn tried to demonize Felicia, painting her as the bad person in return. But it didn't really matter. Bowie won the final 4 HOH, Jag would go on to win the final 4 veto, and now he had a major choice to make. He strongly considered cutting Matt here and giving himself the easiest odds to win that final 3 HOH. Almost kind of similar to Xavier and Kylan from BB23. Up until the last minute, Jag was gonna cut Matt, but then he had a heart-to-heart with Matt before the eviction and realized he couldn't do it. Even though Matt was a big threat and a stronger player than Felicia, this wasn't how Jag wanted to play the game in the end. He wanted to be loyal to an alliance from the beginning, which he was, to a vault, but instead of cutting his closest allies to nab the win, he wanted to now do the opposite. No, he didn't want to lose. He wanted to honor his friendship with Matt and take him to the final 2 after all. He wanted that moment with them side by side facing the jury. Lest we forget, Matt saved Jag back in week 4, and this was Jag returning the favor. Sorta. And yes, Matt did a lot of other stuff all season to save Jag, but still, Jag was fine with taking the road less traveled, even if it meant he would lose. Jag evicted Felicia. Matt then won the first part of the final HOH, and Jag won the second part. The Minutemen agreed to take each other to the final 2, and in the end, Jag defeated Matt in part 3 of the final HOH. He evicted Bowie, and he did it. He fulfilled his ultimate plan. And he didn't have to betray his closest ally to get here. He felt good about how he played, how he represented his community, and how he honored his final 2 alliance. Matt definitely had a resume to flaunt to the jury, and several jurors even thought that he had played the better game, but Matt just wasn't the best public speaker in front of an audience. When the pressure and the spotlight were on him, he tended to defer to other people and sort of shift to the side all season. And he just didn't explain his game all that well or own a lot of it when the jury Q&A happened. On the flip side, Jag took his speech to 11. He owned his game. He was relentless in his conviction for how he believed he deserved to win the season. And while I will personally say it did come off as a little too hot, hey, better to burn out than to fade away.
I am standing where I am standing, and you are sitting where you are sitting because I have willed it to be that way. It is not by luck, it is not by a mistake. It is because I signed your eviction notice. My hands are covered in your blood. I am the most dominant, masterful, and strategic player in this house. You all need to make the right decision today so I can be crowned the first sick winner of Big Brother. It is the right thing to do, and I've earned it every step of the way.
Jag defeated Matt by a final jury vote of 5-2, crowning him the champion of Big Brother 25. It was a bumpy ride to get here, full of twists and turns, and at one point completely going off the rails, but ultimately Jag walked out of that house to a shot of confetti and a check with his name as the latest champion, just the same as the winners before him.
Congratulations, Jag! You are the winner of Big Brother 25!
And that's it. That is the end of the road for now. I know as of this video, we are about to see the 25th winning game crowned for Big Brother 26, and this video series will be dated, but that's the beauty of doing this in the first place. Time waits for no one, and the road goes ever on. Maybe I will talk about the next installment in a few years. Either way, can I just take a minute to flex and say I'm glad I got us all in here in one piece. This has been a massive undertaking of a video series for me, and I'm probably gonna need a rest for like a minute before we get back into that driver's seat for the next one. Whew. Let me know what you think about these winners, about the more modern winners in the show's history. Just a big thank you to my patrons for helping contribute to my bizarre desire to chronicle all of this stuff, keep talking about it, never stop talking about it. Nobody asked for this, but at the end of it, I'm just glad to have an audience who cares. Whether this is your first video on my channel or just the latest, thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to spill the beans to the HOH who's about to evict your ass on your way out, and I will see you in the next one once I get around to stitching this all together for one massive compilation video. I mean, how could I not?
Oh, sweating a little bit.
Something in here really smells like donkey poop.
No wonder people don't want to talk to me.
Coffee maker's broken, and everyone thinks I broke it, and I'm like, I've made coffee every single day.
I cannot stop cursing.
I hope to visit you after the house as well. Wow, I'm not gonna visit Kai. What am I talking about?
My God, she is so annoying. I cannot with Jasmine. Jasmine is the most high maintenance person I have ever met in my life. Not to exaggerate or anything, but living with Jasmine is probably the hardest thing I have ever done in my life.
Oh, they're so pretty.
They're so perfect.
I want 2 muffins, so I'm gonna put them bad boys in a bag and save them for later.
Who ate half of my muffin?
Yo, people trying to with you probably.
Who ate the half?
Did I eat the muffins? Honestly, I should have.
I think that Jasmine's like all of us.
I could totally see this, and that's why I ate her muffin. I mean, I did. I ate the muffin, let's be honest.
I just have one question, Turner.
Yes.
Do you know the Muffin Man?
Oh my God, it's me. At this point, I am the Muffin Man.
Yo, let's go! Let's go!
Oh, there's the hot tub.
Didn't they say no music?
He said no hot tub. They just said
They
said no hot tub.
Didn't they say don't? Yeah.
They literally said that.
Fell in.
Get up. Oh my God. Are you okay? Are you okay?
I survived Survivor. I don't know if I'm gonna survive Big Brother. I'm so sick of it.